Something happened this morning, and most people will never understand the weight of it. You woke up like any other day, but in the unseen realm, everything shifted. Because what you did, yes, you, triggered something in heaven that cannot be ignored. This is not metaphor. This is not imagination. This is a recalibration of destiny. Chosen one, listen carefully. Heaven did not expect that response from you this morning. There was a plan already in motion, doors scheduled to open, timelines already aligned. But the moment you acted, decided, or even thought in that specific way, everything stopped. Not delayed, not adjusted, canceled. Yes, you heard that right. God interrupted the original flow of events because something about you changed the equation. And now heaven is recalculating what comes next for your life. You may feel like nothing happened, but in the spiritual dimension, this morning created a ripple effect that cannot be reversed. Angels noticed it, timelines shifted, and forces you cannot see are now responding to your existence differently. This is why you feel different today. This is why things feel off or unusually intense. Because you didn't just wake up, you activated something. And now the universe is no longer following the same script for you. 1. The morning event that triggered everything. You probably don't even realize what you did this morning, but heaven noticed it immediately. It wasn't something loud. It wasn't something dramatic. In fact, it may have looked completely normal on the outside. But spiritually, it was everything. Maybe you woke up and, for once, you didn't rush into anxiety. Maybe you paused, even for a few seconds, and something inside you shifted. Or maybe you rejected a thought that used to control you. Maybe you chose silence instead of reacting the way you used to. It could even be something smaller than that, something almost invisible. But in the spiritual realm, nothing about it was small. Because the moment you broke your usual pattern this morning, the system around your life registered a change, and that change was not expected. There was a flow assigned to your life today. Yes, a sequence of events already structured around your emotional state, your habits, your reactions. But you interrupted it, not by force, but by awareness. And that is what makes it powerful. You didn't follow the same fear response. You didn't repeat the same emotional cycle. You didn't surrender to the same mental pressure. Instead, you paused. And that pause became a signal that said, something is different in this person now. This is why heaven reacted, because in the unseen world, patterns matter more than words. Repetition creates destiny, and interruption creates rewriting. And this morning, you interrupted something that was supposed to continue automatically. That is why it feels like the atmosphere around you has shifted. That is why certain thoughts feel louder, and certain emotions feel unfamiliar. Because your ordinary routine was supposed to keep you locked in a predictable path. But you stepped outside of it, even slightly. And that small shift was enough to trigger a spiritual response. Not punishment, not chaos, recalibration. Something in your life is now being restructured around the new version of you that appeared this morning, even if you don't fully recognize it yet. 2. What heaven saw in that moment. In that exact moment this morning, heaven was not watching your routine. Heaven was watching your alignment. Because what you did, small, quiet, almost invisible in the physical world, created a loud signal in the spiritual realm. And what heaven saw was not just an action, but a shift in identity. You see, in the unseen world, you are not measured by what you do occasionally, but by what you consistently respond to. And this morning, something broke that consistency. It could have been a single decision, a single refusal, a single moment where you didn't react the way you used to. But heaven registered it immediately, because angels don't respond to volume, they respond to change. And the moment you shifted, even slightly, there was a reaction in the spiritual systems assigned to your life. It looked like this. Timelines paused, assignments reevaluated, spiritual pathways recalculated. Not because you became more important than others, but because your direction changed. And direction is everything. Heaven saw that the version of you tied to fear was no longer fully in control. Heaven saw that the version of you tied to doubt didn't fully respond. And for a brief moment, something new emerged. A version of you that did not match the old pattern. That is what heaven reacted to. Because in the spiritual realm, identity shifts are louder than actions. You didn't need to speak. You didn't need to announce anything. Your energy changed. Your response changed. Your inner resistance changed. And that is what heaven saw. It saw a disruption in the expected flow of your life. A break in the cycle that was supposed to repeat itself today, exactly like yesterday. And when that pattern broke, heaven paused everything tied to that old version of you. Because divine systems do not continue building on something that no longer matches your current alignment. This is why it felt like everything around you became more intense afterward. Because once heaven recognizes change in a chosen path, nothing continues the same way. What you experienced this morning was not random emotional fluctuation. It was recognition. Heaven saw you differently, even if you don't fully see yourself differently yet. And that recognition is what triggered everything that follows. 3. Heaven's sudden reaction. God cancels plans. The moment heaven registered that shift in you this morning, everything that was already in motion was suddenly reevaluated. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. Because in the spiritual realm, certain changes don't get added into an existing plan. They override it. And that is what happened to your life. There was already a sequence assigned to your day. Doors meant to open, encounters meant to happen, outcomes already leaning in a specific direction. But then something in you changed the equation, and heaven responded with what can only be described as a divine interruption. It is not that God is confused, it is that your alignment no longer matches the original script, so the script stops. This is what it means when we say, heaven is recalibrating. It means the flow of events tied to your old pattern has been suspended, not destroyed, not erased, paused for restructuring, because the version of you heaven was building around is no longer fully active in the same way. And that is why it feels like everything around you suddenly became unstable or unusually intense. Because spiritual systems don't adjust quietly when a chosen path shifts direction. They respond, they reassign, they recalculate. And in that moment this morning, it was as if heaven placed a pause over certain outcomes connected to your life and said, do not proceed with the previous configuration. Not because something went wrong, but because something changed within you. And that change is what matters most. This is the part most people miss. They think delays are rejection. They think silence is abandonment. But sometimes, silence is a system pause while something higher is being rewritten. Because what was planned for you under your old emotional state, old mindset, old reactions, cannot fully carry your new alignment. So heaven steps in, not to punish you, but to protect the accuracy of your destiny. And this morning, that intervention was triggered by you. A thought you refused, a reaction you didn't give, a pattern you broke, something small in the physical world, but massive in the spiritual one. So yes, what looks like canceled plans is actually something deeper, a divine suspension of the old timeline. So a corrected one can begin forming around who you are becoming now. And that is why everything feels like it is shifting at once, because heaven didn't just observe you today. It reacted to you. 4. Wake-up call. Turning point. This is the moment you need to understand clearly, because everything changes from here. What happened this morning was not just a spiritual sign. It was a wake-up call to your awareness, a turning point in how you experience your own life. Because there are moments when life does not whisper anymore. It speaks sharply. And this was one of those moments. You may have felt it already. That strange inner pressure, that feeling that something is different, but you can't explain it logically. That is not confusion, that is transition. Because when heaven recalibrates something connected to a chosen path, the human mind always feels it first as discomfort. But in reality, it is alignment beginning. The version of you that was comfortable staying the same is being challenged right now. Not destroyed, not rejected, but challenged to evolve. And that challenge is what creates this emotional intensity, because deep inside, something in you already knows. I cannot stay the same after this. Even if your external life looks normal, your internal world is no longer in the same place it was yesterday. And that is the turning point. This is where most people miss the shift. They think life only changes when something visible happens. But in reality, the most important changes begin invisibly, inside perception, awareness, and reaction. This morning marked the beginning of that invisible transformation for you, because you are starting to see differently. You are starting to feel differently, and even your silence carries a different weight now. That is not random, that is awakening. And awakening is never comfortable at the beginning. It disrupts the familiar, it questions the automatic, it interrupts emotional habits you didn't even realize were controlling you. That is why this feels intense, because something in you is no longer agreeing with your old patterns. And once that disagreement begins, there is no going back to unconscious repetition. You may still feel moments of doubt. You may still feel moments of confusion. But underneath all of that, there is now awareness. And awareness is irreversible. This is the turning point heaven responds to. Not perfection, not achievement, but awareness of change. And once that awareness appears, the spiritual systems around your life begin adjusting in real time. Because now you are no longer just living your day. You are witnessing your transformation. And that is why everything feels heavier, clearer, and more meaningful all at once. You didn't just wake up this morning. You crossed a threshold. And from this point forward, your life cannot fully operate on autopilot the same way it used to. 5. What you did without realizing. You are still trying to understand what changed. But the truth is, it wasn't something big on the surface. It was something subtle, almost invisible. Something you did without realizing its spiritual weight. Because the most powerful shifts in a chosen life are never announced. They are revealed afterward through their effects. This morning, you made a decision in your inner world that broke an old pattern. Maybe it was the moment you didn't agree with a negative thought like you used to. Maybe it was the moment you paused instead of reacting emotionally. Or maybe it was the moment you chose not to carry yesterday's heaviness into today. To you, it felt normal. But spiritually, it was a break in alignment with your previous cycle. And that is what heaven responds to. Because your life is not only guided by events, it is guided by patterns. And when a pattern breaks, even quietly, everything built on it begins to shift. You didn't realize it, but you stepped out of automatic living for a moment. You became aware, and awareness is the beginning of authority. This is why the reaction was so strong in the unseen realm, because you stopped reinforcing something that used to define your emotional responses. That version of you, the one who reacted the same way, thought the same way, felt the same way, lost a small amount of control in that moment. And even though it was small, it was significant, because destiny is not changed by one massive event. It is changed by repeated micro-decisions that shift direction over time. And this morning, one of those micro-decisions changed direction. That is what you did without realizing it. You interrupted an emotional loop that was supposed to continue today. You broke agreement with a pattern that was quietly shaping your outcomes, and heaven noticed that break immediately, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. And in spiritual terms, real change is always recognized before visible change. This is why your thoughts feel different now, why your emotions feel less predictable, why certain reactions no longer feel as natural as they used to. It is because something in your inner system has already started reconfiguring. And you did not force it. You simply stopped feeding the old cycle for a moment. That moment was enough. Enough to signal a shift. Enough to trigger recalibration. Enough to begin rewriting how your day, and potentially your future, responds to you. You did not realize it at the time, but you chose a different direction, and heaven registered it as the beginning of a new alignment. 6. What you must stop doing. Now listen carefully. because this is where the shift either stabilizes or collapses. What happened this morning was not random inspiration. It was a disruption in your old pattern. And if you keep feeding the same internal habits that existed before this moment, you will slowly cancel the very recalibration that just began. So there are things you must stop doing immediately, not because you are being punished, but because you are being realigned. First, stop returning to automatic fear. Fear is the old system trying to regain control. It will whisper that nothing changed. It will try to convince you that yesterday is still stronger than today, but that is not truth. It is repetition, and repetition is what kept you stuck before this shift. Second, stop reacting without awareness. Every time you react emotionally without pause, you rebuild the old version of yourself, the one that heaven just interrupted. You cannot move into a new alignment while constantly reviving an old emotional identity. Third, stop feeding doubt the same authority as insight. Not every thought deserves equal weight. Some thoughts are echoes of conditioning, not signals of truth. If you treat doubt as truth, you collapse the progress that awareness just created in you. Fourth, stop ignoring subtle inner guidance. This is where many lose momentum. After a spiritual shift, guidance becomes quieter but clearer. If you return to distraction, noise, or emotional overload, you will miss the direction being shown to you in real time. Fifth, stop assuming nothing has changed just because nothing visible has changed. That assumption is dangerous right now, because the most important transformation happening in your life is currently invisible. And if you judge it only by external proof, you will disconnect from it before it stabilizes. Sixth, stop going back to your lowest emotional frequency out of habit. You may feel pulled toward old comfort zones, old thoughts, old reactions, old cycles. But comfort is not alignment. Comfort is familiarity, and familiarity is what kept you repeating the same outcomes. This is the warning inside this message. If you continue operating from the old version of yourself, you will delay what has already begun to restructure around you. Not because heaven withdraws, but because you disconnect from the flow that is now being built. This is a narrow window moment, a transition phase. And in transition phases, small choices have amplified consequences. So what you must stop doing is simple. Stop reinforcing who you were, because that version is no longer the center of what is being formed. You are not being asked to become perfect. You are being asked to stop undoing what has already started changing within you. And if you can do that, if you can simply stop feeding the old patterns, then what is recalibrating in your life will begin to stabilize faster than you think. 7. What you must start doing. Now that you've interrupted the old pattern, the real question is no longer, what happened to me? The question is, what do you choose to build from here? Because every spiritual recalibration demands a response, not fear, not confusion, but direction. And this is where your life starts to stabilize again, not by returning to what was familiar, but by stepping into what is now aligned. First, you must start observing your thoughts instead of obeying them automatically. Not every thought deserves participation. Some thoughts are echoes of your old identity trying to stay alive. When you observe instead of react, you regain authority over your inner world. Second, you must start creating moments of intentional silence. Not empty distraction-free silence, but conscious stillness where you allow clarity to rise above mental noise. This is where new direction becomes recognizable again. Third, you must start choosing responses instead of reacting from habit. This is critical. The shift that began this morning becomes permanent only when your reactions stop being automatic. Every pause before reaction is a step into the new version of you. Fourth, you must start strengthening your focus on what feels aligned, not just what feels familiar. Familiarity is powerful, but it is not always truth. Alignment often feels unfamiliar at first because it breaks repetition. Trust what brings clarity, even if it is new. Fifth, you must start protecting your energy from unnecessary emotional input. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every conversation, thought, or environment is meant to shape your current transition. In this phase, discernment becomes protection. Sixth, you must start acknowledging small internal wins. Every time you choose awareness over autopilot, something stabilizes inside you. These small choices are not insignificant. They are structural. They rebuild your internal foundation. Seventh, you must start trusting gradual transformation instead of demanding instant proof. What is happening in you now is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is restructuring, and restructuring takes time to fully reflect in the external world. This is how the new alignment is strengthened, not through pressure, but through consistency, not through force, but through awareness, not through speed, but through direction. And here is the key truth you need to hold on to right now. You are not trying to become someone new from scratch. You are learning how to stop blocking who you are already becoming. So what you must start doing is simple at its core. Start living with awareness that your choices now carry a different weight than they did before. Because they do. And every aligned action from this point forward is not just behavior. It is construction. 8. Hidden activation moment. The point of no return. There is something you need to understand about this shift that most people completely miss. What happened this morning was not only a recalibration, it was also an activation point. A moment where your awareness crossed a threshold it cannot fully unsee. And from this point forward, there is no returning to complete unconsciousness about your own inner patterns. You may still try to live normally. You may still get distracted, still fall into old habits occasionally, still doubt what you felt. But something has now been permanently introduced into your perception. Awareness of the shift. And awareness changes everything. Because once you have seen how quickly your internal state can influence your external reality, even in subtle ways, you start noticing patterns you never noticed before. You start recognizing when your emotions are leading your decisions. You start sensing when old conditioning is trying to regain control. You start feeling the difference between reaction and alignment. This is the real point of no return. Not because something external has trapped you, but because your perception has expanded, and expanded perception cannot fully shrink back to ignorance. This is why things may feel different even in silence now. Not louder, but clearer. Not chaotic, but more precise. And if you pay attention, you will notice something else. Small decisions now feel more significant than they used to. That is because your internal system is becoming more sensitive to direction. And sensitivity is not weakness, it is refinement. It means your awareness is upgrading. So do not rush to fix how you feel right now. Do not rush to explain everything. Instead, observe what is becoming clearer. Because clarity is the first stable sign that recalibration is settling. And once clarity stabilizes, your choices begin to align more naturally, without force. This is the hidden activation most people never recognize. Nothing outside needs to change first. The recognition inside changes everything else over time, and you are already inside that process now. 9. Prophetic recalibration. Vision. Now I want you to see something clearly, not with fear, not with confusion, but with vision. Because what is happening to you is not just correction, it is reconstruction. And when heaven recalibrates a life, it does not only remove what is misaligned, it also begins to reveal what was always waiting underneath. So imagine this. Not far from now, you begin noticing small but undeniable changes in your reality. At first, it is subtle. You wake up with clearer thoughts. Your inner noise is quieter. Decisions that once felt heavy begin to feel simple, and situations that used to drain you no longer hold the same emotional power over you. It will feel like distance has been created between you and your old patterns. Not emotional distance, structural distance, as if you are no longer fully accessible to the same cycles that used to control your reactions. And then something deeper begins to happen. Opportunities don't just appear, they align. You find yourself in conversations that feel meaningful instead of random. You start noticing timing that feels unusually precise. You begin stepping into situations that match your awareness instead of your past. This is recalibration in motion, because when your internal frequency changes, your external environment begins to reorganize around it. And here is what you may not expect. Old confusion begins to lose authority over your decisions. Things you once overthought become obvious. Things you once tolerated become uncomfortable. Things you once chased begin to feel unnecessary. This is not loss. This is clarity forming. And as this continues, something powerful starts to emerge in your identity. A calm confidence that does not depend on external validation. You stop needing constant reassurance because your inner alignment becomes your reference point. You stop being pulled in every direction because your focus becomes selective. You stop reacting to everything because not everything has access to your attention anymore. This is what recalibration produces: a quieter mind, a stronger awareness, a more intentional life, and eventually, even your past self feels like a different version of you. Not because you rejected it, but because you outgrew it. Now here is the most important part of this vision. Nothing about this transformation is chaotic at its core. Even if it feels intense right now, it is structured. Even if it feels uncertain, it is directed. Even if it feels sudden, it has been building for longer than you realize. And this morning was simply the moment where the shift became visible enough for you to notice it. So what you are moving toward is not randomness. It is alignment becoming your new normal. A life where clarity replaces confusion more often, where awareness replaces reaction more often, where direction replaces repetition more often. This is your recalibration unfolding, and it is already in motion. Before you close this video, understand something important. What you experienced this morning is not something to fear, and it is not something to overthink. It is a shift in awareness that is now unfolding into structure. And the truth is simple. Once awareness is activated, it does not disappear. It expands. So even if your mind still has questions, even if your emotions still feel in motion, something inside you has already changed its direction. And that is what matters most. You are no longer fully operating from the same internal pattern you had before this message. That interruption you felt, that subtle awareness, that inner pause, it is not random. It is the beginning of alignment taking shape. Now what happens next depends on one thing: what you choose to reinforce from this point forward. Because every thought you accept, every reaction you repeat, every direction you focus on, either strengthens the old cycle or stabilizes the new one. There is no neutral ground anymore in a transition like this. So here is your closing message. Stop doubting every internal shift you feel. Not everything needs immediate explanation. Some things are meant to be lived before they are understood. Stop returning to automatic patterns just because they feel familiar. Familiarity is not the same as alignment. And start trusting the quiet clarity that is beginning to rise within you, even if it is still developing. Because that clarity is how recalibration becomes real in your daily life. You are being guided into a version of yourself that reacts less from fear and more from awareness. A version that pauses before reacting. A version that observes before deciding. A version that does not abandon itself in moments of uncertainty. And that version is not far away. It is already forming through your choices right now. So take this as your final reminder. What began this morning is not ending here. It is continuing through your awareness, your decisions, and your direction. And if you stay conscious of that, you will start noticing something powerful. Life begins to feel less like something happening to you, and more like something responding to you. That is the deeper shift. That is the recalibration, and you are already inside it. If this message resonated with you, don't just let it pass as information. Carry it as awareness through your day. Because the real transformation does not happen while watching. It happens while choosing differently afterward.